She'd been working the same tasting room for so long that wine tourists considered her part of the vineyard's authentic charm. Always there with expert knowledge, always ready with perfect recommendations, always maintaining the sophisticated atmosphere that made wine country special. But when violence came to her peaceful winery, guests learned that some protectors never really retire from duty. Welcome to True Human Tales. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden courage and vineyard heroism, tell me in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Bella Vista Winery, sprawled across 340 acres of rolling California hills, its meticulously maintained vineyards producing award-winning Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay that commanded premium prices at restaurants from San Francisco to New York. The winery had operated for over 30 years, growing from a modest family operation into a destination that attracted serious wine enthusiasts, tourists seeking authentic wine country experiences, and corporate groups hosting business retreats in one of America's most prestigious wine regions. The heart of the visitor experience was the tasting room, an elegant space housed in a converted 19th century barn that had been restored with careful attention to both historical authenticity and modern comfort. Exposed wooden beams supported a ceiling that soared 20 feet above polished concrete floors, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of vineyards that stretched toward mountains that defined the horizon in every direction. The tasting room's design created an atmosphere of relaxed sophistication, reclaimed wood bars where guests could sample wines while learning about the winemaking process, comfortable seating areas where visitors could linger over bottles they'd purchased, and retail displays featuring not just wine, but also artisanal foods and accessories that complemented the wine country lifestyle. The space accommodated up to 80 guests comfortably, though weekend crowds often pushed that capacity during peak tourist season. For the past 11 years, that experience had been orchestrated by Elena Vasquez, whose knowledge of wine and exceptional hospitality skills made her the face of Bella Vista for thousands of visitors each year. At 56, Elena moved with the graceful efficiency of someone who'd learned that wine appreciation required both expertise and patience. Her appearance always professional but approachable, her demeanor warm enough to welcome nervous first-time wine tourists while maintaining the sophistication that serious collectors expected. Elena's expertise went far beyond simple wine service. She knew the story behind every vintage in Bella Vista's portfolio, could explain terroir and winemaking techniques in ways that educated without overwhelming, and possessed an almost supernatural ability to match wines with individual palates based on brief conversations about preferences and experiences. Her tastings were educational journeys that transformed casual visitors into genuine wine enthusiasts. Regular visitors had developed genuine relationships with Elena over the years, often timing their wine country trips to coincide with new releases or seasonal events that Elena coordinated. The Morrison family from San Francisco made quarterly visits and always requested Elena's guidance in selecting wines for special occasions. Business groups appreciated Elena's ability to customize tastings that accommodated varying levels of wine knowledge while maintaining sophisticated atmospheres appropriate for client entertainment. What made Elena exceptional wasn't just her wine knowledge or customer service skills, though both were considerable, but her ability to create experiences that made every guest feel like they'd discovered something special. She remembered customers' preferences across multiple visits, could recommend wines that matched both budget and taste requirements, and somehow always knew exactly what story or educational detail would make each tasting memorable. Elena's office behind the tasting room was organized with systematic precision, customer preference records updated after every visit, inventory tracking that ensured popular wines remained available, and supplier relationships that gave Bella Vista access to limited releases and specialty items that other wineries couldn't obtain. Her wine displays were carefully curated presentations that showcased each vintage's unique characteristics while telling the story of the vineyard's dedication to quality. Regular customers often commented that Elena seemed to know everything about wine, but what they didn't know was that her encyclopedic knowledge of wine production, distribution, and regulation had been developed in contexts far more challenging than hospitality service. Her ability to assess wine authenticity, identify regulatory violations, and coordinate complex investigations came from 19 years with the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, where she'd specialized in investigating criminal enterprises that exploited the wine industry. Special Agent Elena Vasquez had served from 1981 to 2000, working everything from counterfeit wine operations to money laundering schemes that used legitimate wineries as fronts for international criminal organizations. Her official ATF record listed her specialty as Alcohol Industry Criminal Investigation, but her actual experience included coordinating undercover operations against sophisticated networks that moved everything from stolen vintage wines to illegal alcohol imports through wine countries' legitimate business infrastructure. Elena had worked cases where prestigious wineries served as money laundering operations for drug cartels, where wine auctions provided cover for arms trafficking, and where wine festivals attracted international criminals who used legitimate business activities to coordinate illegal enterprises. Her expertise included identifying fraudulent wine operations, coordinating raids on facilities that appeared legitimate but concealed criminal activities, and maintaining undercover personas that required genuine wine knowledge to be credible. Her transition to legitimate wine industry work had been carefully planned after experiences that had taught her to value the authentic passion and artistry that drove honest winemaking. Bella Vista represented everything she'd learned to appreciate about wine culture: family dedication to quality, genuine respect for agricultural traditions, and business practices that enhanced rather than exploited the wine industry's reputation. The winery's general manager knew Elena was former federal law enforcement, but had no idea of the scope of her experience investigating criminal enterprises that targeted wine industry operations. Her job application listed her background as Federal Alcohol Industry Regulation, which seemed perfectly suited for a tasting room position that required understanding both wine production and the regulations that governed alcohol sales. What they didn't know was that Elena's office included more than standard hospitality management equipment. The locked filing system contained detailed assessments of suspicious activity patterns among wine industry visitors, information she'd compiled by monitoring behaviors that suggested potential criminal interest in high-end wine operations. Her computer system included encrypted communication capabilities that could coordinate with law enforcement agencies when necessary. For 11 years, Elena had found profound satisfaction in her winery work. Helping people discover and appreciate quality wines had gradually replaced the stress of investigating those who corrupted the industry, and the steady rhythm of tasting room operations had allowed her to heal from years of pursuing criminals who exploited legitimate businesses for illegal purposes. Her greatest pleasure came from watching guests develop genuine appreciation for winemaking artistry and seeing families create positive memories around wine country experiences. Sunday, September 22nd, was the final day of Bella Vista's annual Harvest Festival, a 3-day celebration that drew wine enthusiasts from across the country for special tastings, vineyard tours, and cultural events that showcased both the winery's premium vintages and the broader wine country lifestyle. The festival represented the culmination of the harvest season and typically generated significant revenue through wine sales, special event fees, and retail purchases by visitors eager to take home souvenirs of their wine country experience. Elena had arrived at 7 a.m. to prepare the tasting room for the festival's closing events, ensuring that special reserve vintages were properly presented and that the retail displays showcased gift packages and limited releases that festival visitors might purchase as harvest celebration memorabilia. By 11 a.m., the tasting room was filled with enthusiasts enjoying special harvest tastings and festival activities. During the peak afternoon period when Harvest Festival crowds brought maximum visitor activity to the winery, Elena was organizing inventory records when she noticed them. 3 men moving through the tasting room with the purposeful navigation that Elena's trained eye recognized as surveillance rather than wine appreciation. They wore expensive casual clothing appropriate for wine country tourism, but displayed none of the relaxed enthusiasm that characterized legitimate visitors. and they moved with the coordinated precision that Elena's investigative experience had taught her to identify as operational planning. Elena's threat assessment protocols, refined through years of identifying criminal activity in wine industry environments, began processing danger indicators with automatic precision. The men's behavior patterns were wrong. They were studying facility layouts and customer patterns rather than tasting wines or enjoying harvest festival activities. Their attention was focused on cash handling procedures and valuable inventory rather than the educational and recreational aspects that should have been their primary interest as festival attendees. Elena continued her normal hospitality duties without changing her professional demeanor, but her awareness shifted into the heightened state that had once made her invaluable to investigations where criminal enterprises used legitimate wine businesses as cover for illegal operations. She mentally mapped the tasting room's layout, noting customer concentration areas, valuable wine inventory, and the communication systems that could coordinate response to developing threats. The men positioned themselves strategically around the main tasting areas where festival visitors were enjoying special reserve wines and making substantial purchases of premium bottles and gift packages. Their placement suggested preparation for robbery operations rather than wine appreciation, and their synchronized timing indicated coordination that Elena recognized from criminal enterprises that targeted wine industry operations during high-revenue events. At 2:17 p.m., during the festival's busiest period, when special harvest events brought maximum cash transactions and valuable wine sales, Elena's suspicions were confirmed when she observed one of the men communicate through what appeared to be a discreet earpiece while studying the cash register area where festival sales were being processed. The coordination suggested a planned operation targeting the substantial cash and valuable wine inventory that harvest festivals typically generated. Elena realized she was witnessing the preparation phase of what wine industry security called a harvest festival robbery, an attack designed to target wineries during their highest revenue events when substantial cash and premium wine inventory would be concentrated in predictable locations. Bella Vista's Harvest Festival was perfect for such an operation. Wealthy wine enthusiasts making large purchases, festival cash receipts, and security protocols designed for hospitality rather than criminal defense. As Elena prepared to coordinate emergency response, she observed the first man reach toward what appeared to be a concealed weapon beneath his jacket while positioning himself near the main cash processing area. The sight of potential weapons in an environment where families were enjoying cultural activities triggered Elena's protective instincts with an intensity that transcended her 11 years of peaceful hospitality work. That's when Elena stopped being a tasting room host and became an ATF agent again. Elena's response combined the wine industry investigation expertise she'd developed during her federal career with intimate knowledge of the winery's layout and operations that she'd acquired through 11 years of daily management. Her first priority was protecting the wine enthusiasts and festival visitors who had no experience with the kind of criminal targeting that Elena had spent years investigating in similar operations. The winery's communication system, which Elena had access to through her tasting room management responsibilities, became the primary tool for coordinating visitor protection. Her voice, calm and professional despite the circumstances, directed festival attendees toward predetermined safe areas using the same crowd management techniques she'd developed for coordinating law enforcement operations in complex environments. Elena's service weapon, a Glock 27 that had been her backup sidearm throughout her ATF career, came from the locked wine storage area where she'd maintained it according to federal agent protocols even during retirement. Her position in the tasting room provided excellent tactical oversight of the main visitor areas, and her years of daily observation had given her intimate knowledge of every sight line and defensive position around the facility. The armed men had expected to control a group of wine tourists whose compliance would provide easy access to cash receipts and valuable wine inventory that could be resold through criminal networks. What they encountered instead was organized resistance delivered by someone who understood both the tactical requirements of federal law enforcement and the specific layout and operations of the facility they'd chosen to attack. Elena's ATF training enabled her to coordinate defensive positions while simultaneously managing visitor evacuation through routes that took advantage of the winery's architectural features. The wine storage areas and tasting room furniture became tactical assets, providing cover and concealment that protected evacuating guests while allowing Elena to maintain defensive control of the main areas. Elena's federal communication training, developed through years of coordinating complex multi-agency operations, provided responding law enforcement with real-time intelligence about suspect positions, weapons capabilities, and civilian locations. Her familiarity with federal tactical protocols ensured that emergency responders could coordinate their approach without confusion or incidents that could endanger the families she was protecting. Within 16 minutes, the threat was neutralized, the winery was secure, and the 80-plus festival visitors who had come to celebrate harvest season were safe from an attack that could have traumatized one of the region's most important agricultural and tourism communities. Elena's immediate threat recognition and tactical response had prevented what would have become a high-profile crime that could have damaged the entire wine country's reputation for safety and hospitality. The evacuation procedures that Elena coordinated proved their effectiveness as guests were moved to safety with minimal panic and no civilian casualties. Visitors later described how winery staff had remained calm and professional throughout the crisis, managing the situation with the competence and discretion that they expected from premium wine country experiences. The investigation revealed the scope of the planned operation, a sophisticated robbery designed to target multiple wineries during harvest festival season, when wealthy wine enthusiasts would be concentrated with substantial cash and valuable wine purchases. The criminals had researched winery operations, security protocols, and law enforcement response times with the thoroughness of professionals planning operations against high-value agricultural businesses. What they hadn't researched was Elena Vasquez. The FBI agents who debriefed Elena were familiar with ATF wine industry investigations and understood immediately why the attack had failed so completely. 19 years of experience investigating criminal enterprises that exploited wine industry operations, combined with 11 years of intimate knowledge of legitimate winery operations and security vulnerabilities. The media wanted to interview her about her transition from federal investigation to wine hospitality, about the criminal threats that target wine industry operations, about the moment when her two careers had intersected to protect the kind of legitimate business she'd spent years learning to distinguish from criminal operations. Elena politely declined all interview requests, preferring to maintain focus on the positive aspects of wine culture rather than the criminal elements that threatened those traditions. Bella Vista Winery resumed normal operations the following week, with enhanced security protocols and a new understanding of the woman who hosted their tasting room. Elena returned to her hospitality duties with the same quiet professionalism she'd always shown, helping guests appreciate quality wines with the same dedication that had made her invaluable to both her law enforcement career and her wine industry work. The only visible change was a small commendation from winery management, thanking her for extraordinary service during a difficult situation. Elena had requested that it not mention specific details, preferring to be remembered for the thousands of positive wine experiences she'd facilitated, rather than the one day when her other skills had been needed. Because some people spend their careers protecting industries they love, and when they transition from investigation to service, their protective instincts remain unchanged. Elena had spent 19 years protecting the wine industry from those who would corrupt it through criminal activities, and 11 years helping wine enthusiasts appreciate the authentic artistry and tradition that made legitimate wine culture worth protecting. The grapes were the same, but the mission had evolved: provide education and appreciation that allows others to enjoy wine culture while standing ready to defend legitimate businesses from those who would exploit them for criminal purposes. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Elena? Someone who seemed like just a friendly wine-tasting host until the moment they revealed the depths of their expertise and dedication? Someone whose daily presence made you feel safer without knowing why? Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today, and share their story with us. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. We publish human stories that matter every single week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story. And remember, sometimes the person pouring your wine knows more about protecting the industry than you could ever imagine.